Good morning, and welcome to BJ's Esoteric Musings. I've been kicking around some ideas the last couple of days trying to determine where I wanted to take our next topic of discussion. Keeping in mind, I still have that grouping of the B attitudes that I wanted to add in, but right now I'm feeling very, not pushed, but nudged towards kind of lending my voice to what others in the community have been talking about over the last few days. One, I think we've all become very aware that we're in the midst of a very big flux that is percolating around this eclipse that's coming very soon, in just another week. So I think to that end, we've all been feeling all sorts of things. We have more in the community coming online with light language. Terry over at Holding Your Space shared her light language that has just come to her in the last week, it sounds like. And that's very exciting. It is very different than some of the other light language speakers. And so that's been fascinating to hear how that is resonating in the community with others that are hearing it and commenting. The other thing is, it was very interesting. I think it was just Monday. I think it was Monday. Could have been Sunday. When Sybil Harmony and Susan Lynn did a collaboration, and it was focusing on healing the heart center, the heart chakra, which Sybil is just a magnificent teacher and healer. So that was really exciting. It was interesting to participate in the chat and see what others were experiencing. But one thing I have noticed for a while is that every time I would start having thoughts about something, like when I was first trying to develop the idea of doing this channel, because I may or may not have mentioned that my guides, especially over the last half, from summer on last year, they were hounding me about, you really do need a channel. You really do need to do a YouTube channel. And 3 years ago, I wouldn't even watch YouTube. I didn't believe anything that happened on YouTube. I was so used to the dissemination of propaganda that I thought, oh no. Well, and then my cousin, who I've talked about before, my CT, my cosmic twin, and we definitely are that. When I would go out to visit her, she would be showing me these different tarot readers, is how it started. And she says, check this out, cuz this is really cool. And so I thought, oh, okay. And then I thought that was interesting. And so for a couple of times I went and checked out some of the card readers. And then the next time I visited, she had discovered this community of card readers and channelers. And she started introducing me to these magnificent, wonderful psychics. And it started with Marianne down there in Australia, and I was so fascinated with her work. And then Libby, who also happens to be in Australia, and the wonderful readings that she puts forward. And then I started communicating on my own with some of these guys. I would reach out to them via email, and I've been watching you, and it spurred this thought or that thought, and sometimes dialogues would go back and forth. And then I realized that, like my husband and I have commented so many times about the massive collective consciousness, and that in many cases, there are no original thoughts, that basically people key into that slipstream of consciousness. And I guess they've known this for a very long time, which is why they had to develop a patent office, because so many people were showing up with the same concepts, and maybe just a little unique to their vision of it, but basically the same sort of thing. So my husband has always said he is not a original thinker. He simply knows how to tap into that collective consciousness stream, and then that's what starts generating ideas for him. Well, I know that I've always been very tapped in to my somethings. I didn't know what those somethings were as a kid. I was struggling to find definitions and understandings, and this is an area I think all of us can agree that is not readily accessible, especially if we are of a certain age, and really until the explosion of transcendental meditation basically introduced by the Beatles to the world. They had been studying it, or at least certainly to the younger generation that followed them, and then started looking into our own understandings of and curiosities about what those things were. But I do know that over time, as I would develop ideas, inevitably one of the channels would post a video about it. And I thought, well, how am I ever going to make this happen if I can't hold on to my concepts because they're getting disseminated here and there? And it dawned on me, because, it's like, I always joke, dyslexic though I be, but it's very true, which is why I can always see around corners and possibilities, because my brain is always flipping things around. But I realized it's part of that collective consciousness. And as we're building this community, and because there's so many psychics and gifted people on here, we all start keying into each other. And I was really made aware of it, which I have digressed, and I go back to Susan Lynn and Sybil's discussion with the heart chakra. And as Sybil was leading us through this healing, we all started commenting after the fact of things that we were aware of. Now, we have a waterfall in our backyard that feeds into our fish pond. And it happens to be right off our deck, which is right here off the library and right off our kitchen, and a wraparound affair to the rest of the house. Well, because the weather's been so beautiful, I had windows open on Sunday as this was going on, this video. And I began listening to the waterfall out there because it is so soothing and relaxing. And I was envisioning that waterfall, like energetically hitting my head and splashing down water and just running down my body. And Susan Lynn and several other people after that was wrapped commented, well, I was hearing a waterfall. I don't know why I was hearing a waterfall. What the heck? What was that all about? Why is there a waterfall? And I quickly in the chat, I posted, we have a waterfall. I have windows open. I was sitting here listening to it and incorporating it into my meditation on the healing. And, because we were all so busy sharing, no one really acknowledged or picked up on that. So I thought, But yes, over and over, the many things I think we are all maybe distilling to the point that as we are bringing on those things that are unique to us in our learning, we also are giving another witness to what others are bringing on and saying, oh yes, I'm experiencing that. My so-and-so is experiencing that, my sister, my brother, my whatever. And yes, I'm hearing others saying, talking about this. So I think that might be some of what we're seeing. And I also happened to catch, I dearly love JJ Tuta and Gerald, his Stash Tarot. Now all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank. But anyway, I love their collaborations, and when they do the light, when he hosts her and Karen for light language, she does a lot of collaborating with Terry, which is how I got to hear Terry's light language that has come in. was in a collaboration she was doing with JJ. And so, yes, the conversation they were having, and I've got some notes here, so excuse me, because I was quickly writing things down. I know Gerald had challenged us that caught a video of theirs the prior week about writing down 3 of our superpowers. What are our superpowers? And they can be everything from being, from the most simple to the most complex. And so I wrote down my 3 superpowers, and I said, manifesting. I learned how to do manifesting decades ago, and I've always been very good at it. I think because maybe because I can get busy with other stuff so easy, but once I set the intention and form the purposeful thing that I want to manifest, I often will write it down. I'll put the little piece of paper, I'll just fold it up real small, drop it into my Tibetan singing bowl, and I ring that bowl 3 times, and then I walk away and leave it. Because that's one thing I found with manifesting. If you keep revisiting it, it's like a rote prayer that you constantly repeat. I never understood that, because just like with the manifestation, if you don't truly release it, then you are continually interjecting and basically telling Spirit, well, yes, I turned it over to you, but. And we all know whenever you put the but in there, then everything behind that is negated, because what you're saying is, I'm a micromanager. I got to keep my hands in. And I very quickly learned that no, I tested that process enough over time, because I always tested my guides from the time I was little. It was a little game I would play. It was my game, but they were just reinforcing, yes, we're here. Yes, we hear you. Yes, we'll answer your requests. But manifesting was one of those things that I learned. Absolutely, you do not micromanage. You clearly express your need and your wish for them to aid in making that happen, and that you have absolute faith and trust that they will do it in the timing and in a way that is optimal for you and your life experience at that time. So in manifesting, I mean everything from, I know last week I talked about my animals, and I talked about Sooner and Shadow and their puppies. Well, they were having those puppies in the 80s at the height of all of the bad rap going on about pit bulls. And people thought I was nuts. They said, why would you have a litter of dogs right now with everything going on? You'll never find homes for them. And I said, oh, yes, I will. I manifested it. I put it out there, and I said, this is what the need is. Please only send people who will treat these dogs kindly and as family members. I do not want them fought. I do not want any ugliness around them. Only send me families that are really looking for a good dog and will give it a good home. And in fact, I even had one man who lived in New Mexico who got a dog from my first litter, and he said this dog is a natural he was a farmer. And he said, this dog is a natural on my ranch. He knows what to do with the cattle. He knows how to be around the horses. And he says, and I remembered him, he was a trucker too. And he happened to be coming through Arizona when he saw my little ad for the first litter, and he stopped. And so third litter, several years later, I get a knock at the door. And it's the same man, and he says, I don't know if you remember me. I said, of course I do. You got a pup from my first litter of puppies. He says, yes, and he started telling me about what a great dog it was. And he goes, I really was hoping I remembered where you live, and I'm really hoping that you might have another litter, because that dog is so wicked smart. I want to get another one. And I said, well, come on in, you're in luck. We've got a litter that's ready to start being homed right now. And so he got another pup from us and on his way. So I was having things, and I was getting rid of sometimes two puppies a day. Somebody'd call mid-morning and then they'd call early afternoon, and I had no problem getting those dogs homed when the time came. So big believer in manifesting. My other superpower I listed is compassion. I've always had a very compassionate heart. I am a weepa, as I mentioned before. And from the time I was little, I didn't understand why could be playing and so happy one minute, and the next minute I felt, crestfallen and almost depressed, and then the tears, and I'm like, why am I crying? And my mother would even say, BJ, why are you crying? I don't know. And it's like, what a goofy thing. Well, then as these things happen and you experience them, you help someone else. So when my daughter began going through those things, and I would go by the room and hear her crying or something, and I'd step in and, hey, Kate, what's going on? I'm not really sure. And so we could sit down and talk about it, and I could help step her through it. But yes, I consider compassion one of my superpowers, even though sometimes it's been heartbreaking too. And then my third is, I do believe that I have a loving heart center. Over time, like so many of us with broken relationships, or, we get our hearts broken as teens and whatever, I began to build up some pretty nice little brick walls. And so over time, I became aware that I had walled off my heart to a lot of things. And so the first thing I did was one of my visits to northern Utah, and again, my CT, she had become aware of a gentleman that did chakra balancing with crystals. And so she set up the appointment for me and brought me, and I was blown away by the time he was done. My heart was so wide open, and it was one of the first times I experienced where it says in Scripture, the peace that surpasseth all understanding. I had that. I went home that night. I crawled into bed, so grateful for this open heart and to feel it once again. And I said, please, I just want to stay in this bliss. Can I just stay locked into this bliss? And of course, that is not the reality of this duality planet. So it didn't hold over time. And as other things happened, I built up a few more blocks. But I did manage to hold on to this loving heart center, even though I may have had a few little barricades here and there. But I eventually, especially this year, when I decided that, okay, I'm going to accept this challenge of starting a YouTube channel and see how that goes. So I contacted someone that actually I originally found her on the Gaia channel with Meredith was having her as a speaker. And then Sheila, what is her? Celtic Tarot. She had this gal on, and she's also up in Colorado, where Sheila is. And she does this wonderful clearing. And so I reached out to her, and I got an appointment with her. And so she worked on clearing out any residuals. And with her, she goes clear back to childhood, wherever these things happened that set up these things in the heart. And so it was funny when she finished with me, she said, that was very interesting. She says, usually it starts in childhood and then works up to adulthood. And she says, I think it was interesting. In your case, we worked backwards. And I said, dyslexic. I said, I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but I often, that's why I love Yoda speak. Backwards talking, I do. So I'm very good at doing things backwards. But that helped, I think, clear out and allow me to then fully come into this commitment. And so now my other mantra that I added to the superpowers after listening to Gerald and JJ this weekend was to declare an I am message that then resonates out to our guides and out into the universe that says, this is how I want to move intentionally forward. And I said, I am a clear and conscious channel, which I do channel, but usually it's like a savant moment and it comes in quick. I give the message, I tell them pay attention because I'm not going to remember this because I'm not the one I'm just the conduit. And, blah, 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 blah. I roll out the message and inevitably they'll come back the next day and go, what was that you were talking about? I'm like, have no idea. But that's why I stated it this way, to be a clear and conscious channel, because it's difficult, but I think it's important because it's part of owning collectively what we are putting out to the world. Working with symbols, and ironically, I got this card set. It just got to me this weekend, and it's DNA activation cards with symbols and some of the stuff I'm obviously going to want to incorporate here, but they're fabulous. You've got, that's just the invitation card to tell you about it. But there's literally, they have symbols, and on the back, this one happens to be trust. That one reminds me of a sailboat, but it's presence. This one is Trinity. But I think these are going to be fun for us to explore. This is foresight. Unification. Isn't that interesting? So, yes, symbols are coming online for a lot of people right now. And I think that's, like I say, that's going to be one of the things that we're going to want to look into going forward. Hello. Pardon me, let me just put this thing back. But we also are experiencing new clairs that are coming on board. I have a lot of clairs that I've had have come on board through the years. And I kind of, again, chuckle as I've heard the other channels over time talking about, the clairs and the different things that I'm like, yeah, got that. Yeah, I have that. Oh, yeah, got that. But we have new ones coming in. So that's going to be fun to share and find out what's coming online for people in their clairs. Or, no pun intended, clarifying their clairs, getting them tuned in. It's like I used to explain to my daughter when initially she was communicating, and she says, but I don't always hear things really clear. And I said, well, I gave her the analogy, as so many of us do, of the radio frequency. And if the radio station isn't quite dialed in right, it's a little off, or you get a bleed over from another until you can get that signal clicked in just right, and then it's full on sound. Um, and so I think we're going to be experiencing more of that sharpening of the skills. Um, People have been talking about earth rumbles, flashes of light. Um, Somebody in the chat brought to Gerald and JJ's attentions about the three incidences on the Hopi Mesa of the blue light showing up, and what that could possibly mean. And the other thing I thought about with the earth rumblings is that I haven't necessarily been aware of those auditorially, but what I have been getting for the last 6-8 weeks easily, and I guess maybe because I'm from California, so grew up around earthquakes and just never even thought twice about them. But as I've been like sitting in the family room or something, I suddenly am aware that I'm doing this, and I'm like rolling, like my seat under me is shifting, and I'm like, what? Are we getting an earthquake? Because that kind of was what it reminded me of. Is this an earthquake? But I thought, no, can't be. And there has been times when I have found out that, yeah, there was a earthquake off the coast in the ocean, but it would, they would be so insignificant on the scale that it's like I wouldn't be hearing them or feeling them this far inland. So, yeah. So I think those are the earth rumbles, and I'm just experiencing it a little bit differently, because definitely the earth is responding to all the energies as we are becoming magnified. She is becoming even more magnified beyond the greatness that she is already. But I think it's helping her as she's transitioning and trying to throw off all of the ick that humanity has placed on her for so long. And, I don't know if any of you noticed, but she's tired. She's tired. And she's asked for help. And I know several years ago, I began commenting to my husband, because we're here in Oregon, Pacific Northwest. We are in, forest lands, tree country. And I've said, do you notice how tired the trees are? They're exhausted from having to work so hard to clear the energy, the air, and all of that. They're tired. And so it's important that we lend our love to the flora and fauna as well, and embrace the trees and let them know, I hear you, I feel you. Take some of this. I freely give you this energy, to help you continue your mission as designed. Flashes of light. Now, I have heard Susan Lynn talk about flashes of light. And she said she gets light flashes so often. She says, I think if I mentioned anything like that to my optometrist, they'd probably be having my brain scanned and everything else. But I have seen this vertical flashes, almost looking like a symbol, but not quite. And I've wondered, what is that block? It's like blocking, I guess is the best way I can describe it. There'll be vertical columns, but within them there's structure. And I'll see like a ladder. So I'll see these rungs within it. But it's always so quick that I can't. Maybe I need to draw it or something. But I can be out standing on the deck throwing fish food into the pond. And I've had this happen where all of a sudden, across on the other side of the deck, I'm suddenly aware of this vertical column of light shift, and it's like, what is that? We've caught things like that on our ring on the front porch, And that's interesting. We have a lot of activity around the home anyway, energetically. We have we're kind of a through station for fairies. We're very open to the fae and fairy folk here. We invite them in, and I have fairy rings in the gardens. Um, I have a dedicated sacred space in the home where I have built little fairy homes, I call them. And they're mostly symbolic, but they're there to show the fairies that we love them, we appreciate them, and that we freely want to have an exchange with them. And we do. Um, and so there can be all kinds of things. We One night we caught on the ring. This was interesting. It was like a big soap bubble, and we watched it come down the column by our planter right at the front steps, and then we watched it kind of go down low and flow gently across. I have ceramic planters with different uh, lilies and things in it, and watched them go by all of those planters, and then suddenly it shot up, and this burst of vertical light, and it was gone. The bubble was gone. It was that quick. It was just there and gone. Um, and yeah, we high strangeness we have caught many times on our ring. Um, so we know the camera lens can catch things often that our eye lenses don't, or we dismiss. So it's always kind of fun to have those things around. One of the things that was talked about is the fact that people are becoming aware that stones are becoming active, that some of these rumblings may be an awakening of stones. Now, depending on stones, on which stones and which types, I've always been aware that stones are awake and communicating with us and us with them. And it can be a very, I almost see it like the infinity symbol, the figure eight. We pour into them, they pour into us. And it's like that so much in doing esoterica and things of spirit. It's always this infinity. That's the as above, so below. Same concept. It doesn't appear in materiality until someone in a realm not here develops designs, and then they send it down into the collective consciousness. This is how it functions. They send that concept down, somebody keys on it, or several somebodies, and it then becomes developed in the material. So what I know about sprites and elementals, the tree spirits, all of those things, Edgar Cayce, who I have mentioned, I studied a lot of his works through through several decades of my life. I still hold to a lot of his information, but he talked about the formation of the planet and how things developed during those times. I hate to say time because it's not time as we think of it, but he explained that as we were all co-creators with our Creator, we were all very much an active process of developing this planet. We all had input. We all added our energies into it, our thoughts into it, our desires into it. And as it was developing, the Adamic man had not yet, that form had not been created. But everything else was coming online. all of the earth, the plants, the trees, the waters, the rocks. And there were a number of souls that got impatient, and they wanted to experience this 3D dimension. Now, keeping in mind that in spirit form we are very different than in the physical. When we inhabit a physical vessel, that density isn't there. And that early on, before the development of the human form, these souls would come down and play in materiality. And they would go back and forth, very transitional, because we were not dense in a human form, so we weren't trapped in that. But what happened to many of them over time, and they found the enjoyment of the physicality of this planet, of the dimension that it is, that they became trapped in materiality. And that is what lends itself to the sprites that are within the rocks. It is these early souls, some of what is in the trees, and that. And what I found fascinating as I pondered this, and because as the discussion was being had, the piece that I just offered here with the Edgar Cayce material was not in the discussion, and I think that was what kind of stunted it at that point. But as we are evolving, as we know, we are ascending, and vibratorially and every other way, we are developing this now to what it should have been all along, before the density of fear and those elements were manifested here. They were not meant to be here. And then they became controlling. And so it caused us to really kind of get knocked off of our journey to a great degree and have to figure out other avenues, right? So I found that fascinating, that apparently with the rumblings, these sprites and spirits are not only waking up and magnifying, but my suspicion, and again, this is just according to BJ, if it resonates with you, ponder it further and let me know what you come up with, or, dismiss it and set it aside. That's totally up to you. These are musings. This is what musing is all about, is what ifs. And I'm wondering if it's now their time to be able to become untrapped and take the core of that soul, because they've been in that material place for so long. I'm sure some of that will remain and that communication will remain, but they are going to become untrapped and allowed to go back to their origins. What a beautiful thought. I just was blown away as that came to me. I thought, oh my gosh, how magnificent. To me, it's yet another unfoldment of some of the things that the sages and masters through time have spoken of, times ahead that they foretold and could see the future events and where they may possibly lead. One of material that I'm going to get into and discuss here as well comes from the Lama Singh group. Lama Singh is a collective of souls that chose to sit as a counsel to a man in the physical known as Al Minor. Al Minor had a near-death experience in the 70s that completely shifted him to his core, and he began channeling from that point forward, and he would bring out the Lama Singh materials. He did lots of one-on-one reading readings for people. He and Lama Singh developed coursework, which I would love to introduce some of that material here. It's called A Course in Mastery, not A Course in Miracles, A Course in Mastery. And that I took as an online course in the very early 2000s when he offered it for a second offering. The first time he offered it with a group that had been part of his study group, the Search for God study group, Edgar Cayce material. And they became benefactors to he and his wife to help keep him involved and active in the work, because like Edgar Cayce, so much material was given through the Lama Singh group, and they're still working on transcripts. I transcribed some of that work as a volunteer while I still had my transcription business. When things were slow, I would do some transcribing as my gifting back to that community for all the beautiful things I learned from them through the years. I've been involved with Al Miner from... I became aware of him in the mid-90s and participated in his harmonic... there was the concordance and the convergence, and my brain always gets them backwards, but I participated in both those events, which is very interesting stories to share one day with you guys, but this isn't the day. But yes, he talked extensively about something that he and his wife used to call the Sea of Faces. The Sea of Faces were, how do I describe them? I hate to use the word damaged, because I think souls can get derailed, and yeah, they may have some bruising. If you've lived a particularly hard life experience in the physical, oftentimes when those souls cross over for any number of reasons, they do not know the proper sequence that happens in the crossover. And so they're not aware of the tunnel, they're not aware of the light to go and complete that journey. So they get trapped and stuck to a degree. And they actually, because of the damaged, again, poor choice of words, so don't hold these words tightly to me, but it's the best way I can describe it. When they cross, they need to be cocooned or put into this sea of faces. It was where they were when Al first became aware of them. And he described them as that show, or what I saw in my mind's eye was an episode of Star Trek, the original show in the 60s. And there's a scene where Captain Kirk and his away team go to a planet, and they become quickly aware that they're like in a matrix of sorts. Their hosts on the planet are being very less than honest, a bit deceptive in what they're allowing Kirk and the away team to see. And so he says, we're on some kind of a ship or a hologram or something. We're here to see your planet. And so the trap has been sprung. They know what's going on, and so the beings open a window to let them see that the planet is literally just so full of beings that they're all literally mashed together on top of each other. And that was what I saw in my mind's eye as Al described that sea of faces. And in 2014, I think it was, Al, in one of his channeling sessions, had said that the sea of faces was emptied, that all of those souls have been rehabbed, so to speak, had been made whole once again, and had been, in fact, one of those that had been entrapped in their from their life experience and in the sea of faces, had come forward, evolved, and joined the Lama Singh group because she wanted to give back and help those who had dealt with severe addiction, severe traumas, severe abuse, whatever the situation. She wanted to help them transition out of that and find their way to a better experience. So as I was sharing this at a women's retreat, I got talking about this, and I suddenly just burst into tears. And my sister was shocked. The woman I was speaking to was surprised. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Because in the moment, what caught me was the realization that not only was it emptied, but that meant that souls were not needing that way station at that point. We had evolved ourselves to the understanding enough that maybe a brief cocooning might happen to dust off the ugly and to sing that soul back to health, because that's what a lot of the angelic realm does. I've seen them like nuns, all in white, in these rooms, these chambers where they have 5 in a room, cocooning and sleeping as they sing and heal the soul. But they don't have to sit indefinitely, for however long indefinitely is on the other side, in that sea of faces. That was no longer a necessary thing. And that realm had collapsed down, which is what they do. As less and less souls are needing a realm, once they can no longer, if it's down to just 3 or 4 or whatever amount, they can't sustain that realm, because the energy of those within the realm are what sustain it. So when they can no longer sustain it, those that can come in, shift the few that are left over to a more appropriate realm, and then the realm no longer exists. It gets collapsed down on itself. So those were some of the things that had come to me as I was listening and pondering this conversation. And again, with the rumblings and the stones, it is a resetting of the baseline energy of the planet, is what it is. And of course, that is in the resetting of us as well, because that infinity loop, we are part and parcel. We walk on this planet, she impacts us. We impact her. It just is that infinity loop. What was it? Gerald had commented, the one helps the other to rebalance. Past connection, that was talking of new light languages. I'm sorry, I'm deciphering here. Asking, what is your origin? Where is your origin? Where and what are we becoming as we move forward? And yes, language, we are seeing language expand beyond words, and thank goodness, because words are such stumbling blocks, the misinterpretation. And I think that's why animals always continue to communicate in pictures. They send you a download of pictures, and then our human mind has to pick it apart and interpret. Sometimes they do give you just the words, because they're like, oh, you daft human, we got to get on with this. But for the most part, most things in nature communicate in imagery. And I think even my husband, who has the gift of telepathy, he often has a difficult time with human minds, because we have monkey minds. I mean, we really kind of do. And so their thoughts can be all over the place, where he says, no, an animal's straightforward. You get this download picture extravaganza